Hey guys, I've got a really fun video for you today because it's fleet update day. It's been a long time since we've done this, and in this video we're going to talk about what it's been like to own our classic vehicles, talk about the good, the bad, the cars that are just bleeding money right now. We're also going to talk about personal vehicles, what's been going on in Andre's fleet and Nathan's fleet. We've got some really sad stories there actually, and just go over all the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now we're not going to focus on the new cars and trucks because they're new and they've been pretty reliable, but we're going to talk about the stuff that's just been total money drains and what it's been like to own some of these cars, what's coming, what's leaving. We're going to start with the car side of things, and then we're going to go to trucks, SUVs, and the personal vehicles, and that's where things get really depressing. So this car has been one of the standout problem childs of the year, probably of the decade. This is a 1987 Porsche 911. Now my dad, Roman, this was one of his bucket list cars. He thought it'd be really fun to do a video series on. We bought this car almost 7 months ago, and to be brutally honest, we've had it in our possession for a total of 2 weeks. Now this was probably the cheapest running and driving clean title Porsche on the internet, but what people that buy the cheapest running and driving clean title cars on the internet don't tell you is that even though they may look nice and even though they may drive pretty nicely, it's all the little stuff that'll absolutely kill you. So $36,000, which was a pretty good deal for a wide body whale tail air-cooled 911 in this market. But like I said, seriously, we've had it for a total of about 2 weeks in our possession. It has been at the shop for 6 going on 7 months and really no end in sight. So we bought it with a non-functioning convertible top, but we thought we'd take a gamble that it was something small. It turns out it wasn't something small at all. The first shop we brought it to kind of poked at it for a few weeks and then, handed it back to us. So we decided we needed to go with a more reputable shop, and they actually got the convertible top working, more or less. And it took so long because what had happened is the actual mechanism that supports the top on the body structure of the vehicle had come unwelded from the vehicle. Someone basically, they think, stepped on the top or somehow manipulated the top in such a way where they broke the weld, the supporting weld for the whole top mechanism. So this had to go to a body shop to get re-welded on, and then the motor that controls the electric top failed, and now we're having issues with the header mechanism actually latching the top. So this has been the primary objective of fixing the car, is getting the top working. At least it will go up and down now at the push of a button. The motor that latches it to the header is still a little intermittent, so it's going back here shortly to get fixed. But yeah, it's been an unbelievably daunting experience. And then shortly after we bought the car, the engine computer started acting up, so it would just intermittently cut out in the engine. That turned out to be failed solders in the DME, or kind of the engine control computer, so that had to be sent out to be re-welded. Then we had a new radio put in it. This was a really cool part of this car actually, and we have a video over at TFL Classics, but it's the old school looking but brand new modernized Porsche radio, which is truly fantastic. And works brilliantly. One of the coolest parts of the car, it's got Apple CarPlay and that kind of thing. And now we're struggling with the steering wheel. So we ordered a new steering wheel a while ago, and then the steering wheel showed up, and then when the shop went to order the hub that attaches the steering wheel to the car, the steering wheel company went out of business. So then they had to track down a new hub. The hub finally came in, COVID delays and that kind of thing, and now we're struggling to actually wire up the horn on the new steering wheel as well. So this is still a work in progress. Got to get rid of this horrible looking PlayStation steering wheel. And then we ordered a new turn signal stock because the low beams weren't working on the multi-function switch, and this turn signal stock came in and it feels like crap. It's actually a OEM part manufacturer, but the quality is just really, really bad. So now that has to come apart and be taken back. And this car just continues to throw problems. The fuel injection system is now acting up in a way where the idle's a little funky. How much do we have in it? I don't even know, but it's at least $10,000. And it's been frustrating because now we're entering winter. The car is finally kind of sort of back in our possession and we can't drive it. So has it been a good ownership experience? Not really. Is it an amazing car to drive when it works? Incredible. Truly is one of the best driving cars I've ever experienced, but Yes, that's why you haven't seen it on the channel, because $10,000, $15,000 later, it still needs more love. All right, next up, the 2013 Mini Cooper JCW GP. Now, if you haven't noticed, we are pretty big Mini fans over here, and this is a really special car. This is a GP, which means it was one of just a couple thousand that were made in 2013. It's the high-performance, stripped-down, track-going model. Now, these are typically really expensive. They're like $25,000. This one my dad bought a year and a half ago for 14 grand. I begged him not to buy it because they said it's too good to be true. The dealer's probably lying to us about what's actually wrong with it. And sure enough, it showed up from the truck in Texas, and it showed up as a total basket case. It had all sorts of warning lights on the dashboard. Airbag light was on. It just was in horrible condition when it showed up. So since then, we fixed the lights on the dashboard, and then we have just been driving it, and we expected this car to be an absolute debacle of a vehicle to own, giving Mini's old reputation and giving the fact that this one has clearly been abused its entire life. But it actually has been truly fantastic. Really has been a really good ownership experience, because what I did actually is install a set of these really sticky track-going tires, an aftermarket set of wheels, and I've been autocrossing this Mini. It's been my first foray into on-road motorsports, and it has been an absolute joy. I still suck at the autocross thing, but the car has been really reliable, actually. You really beat it up on the track. Every now and then it'll throw a check engine light, but it always goes away and just comes back for more. Now, the great thing is, if this was a really nice GP that was super low mileage, you'd be worried about, like, hurting it on the track. But this one is made out of Bondo from here on back, so it turned out to be a really good purchase. We drive it on the weekend sometimes too. It's just great to tool around in. It's really a fast car. We're talking pretty serious performance. It has a stripped down interior, no rear seat from the factory. It's got special Recaros. It's got this loud burbly exhaust from the factory. It just puts a giant smile on your face. So for 14 grand, we're probably in it, I don't know, about 17 in total, and no plans to sell this anytime soon, because this has been my autocrosser, ton of fun to drive. And you're not going to lose money on this car either, even though that this is probably not one of the best GPs in the country. It still is a GP, very limited production run. People go crazy for these in the Mini community, so it's going to stick around in the fleet. All right, now for the latest vehicle in the Classics fleet, the 1982 Citroen 2CV. This is a little French car that kind of looks like a snail. If you know me, know I'm a huge fan of old and weird French cars. And this car has been pretty good, actually. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to drive it as much as I would have liked over the last month or so, partly because the weather's getting bad and partly because I've just been super busy. Now, it's not perfect, even though it's shiny and it looks great, and it actually drives really nicely. I went to get it through Colorado emissions, and it didn't pass, which is a little bit of a bummer. So it's going to the shop tomorrow, actually, and I'm going to do a video with my buddy Ted Axe to see if we can get this thing through emissions. Emissions in Colorado, by the way, are the biggest bunch of hooey I've ever heard in my entire life, because they're only the counties surrounding Denver, so a lot of the state has no emissions, and it's a privately owned company. It's not even a state-owned company, and everyone has to do it, and everyone has to pay the $25 every couple of years. It's just like, in my opinion, it's a big money-making scheme, and it's just infuriating that I have to get this little two-cylinder car worked on to squeak through emissions that gets driven like 500 miles a year. But then if I go buy a property out east, or some kind of sketchy business, I could register a deleted truck and drive it every day rolling coal, and that's just like how things work in Colorado. So I hate that, really hate that. But it's a really fun car anyway. Sorry to go on my emissions tirade. Really love it. Super soft suspension. It only goes about 55 miles an hour, but gets a bunch of smiles everywhere you take it. It's a convertible. It's got seats that look like a cow. I'm not sure if this is going to be a permanent addition to the TFL collection, but I do love driving it. It's really just a fun thing to zip around in. I'd like to keep it for at least one more summer to experience once the winter goes by, and then we'll go from there. All right, onward. All right, so let's talk about one of my own personal cars that I own. This is my 1993 Rover Mini. Now, the backstory about this is, bought it as a non-runner for 5 grand. Thought we got a hell of a deal, and then it turns out that it needed a full engine transmission out job to replace the clutch, which had fallen out. And then from there, it needed suspension work and interior work and wheels and tires, and then I did stuff like the front rally lights. But this car, even though it's an old British car, has been a truly phenomenal ownership experience. Now, this is one of these cars that you think just sits here nonstop and never gets driven, but I drive this car at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. I've put several thousand miles on it, and even though it's an old fuel injection system from the Rover group, it just keeps working. It's been phenomenal. Nothing is broken. It's constantly dirty. It gets driven in all sorts of weather. It's been an amazing ownership experience. Easily the best, I think, of every car currently in this warehouse. It is my favorite car of all time, and it is not going anywhere because for some reason it's defying all odds and just won't break. Now, funny enough, it does get really bad fuel economy, like mid-20s. Seriously. Super inefficient for the size and the shape of the thing, but I just don't care. Surprisingly, my friends don't love it that much, probably because they have to squeeze into it and it's the size of an eggplant, but then they're not the ones driving it and experiencing the joy that is Mini ownership. So believe it or not, this car has been really reliable. I'm probably in it, you know, when you add up all the receipts from purchase, like $14,000, which is about probably what it's worth, but I don't care. I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it because I love the car, super fun to drive, and it has been an awesome ownership experience. All right, onwards. All right, so the next car in my personal fleet, and probably the least interesting on the channel, is my 2003 Mini Cooper S, a car that everyone said would be a basket case and a terrible ownership experience. Now, I've only had this for a few weeks, but I've been driving the beans off of it. I think I put well over 1,000 miles in just a few weeks. I actually drive this more than pretty much every car. I drive this way more than even my Jeep Wrangler, my brand new one, because it's just so much fun. It has been dead reliable, surprisingly. I just put a set of snow tires on it, so this is going to be my winter beater, if you will, and I just love it. Really, really love it. My plan was to hold on to it for just a few months and then probably move it on, but I'm kind of falling for the little guy, so we'll see what happens there. So that is the Mini situation. Now let's talk about the no pavement needed trucks over at TFL Truck. We did this affordable truck challenge where we were given $2,500 to go out and buy an off-roader. So what happened to him after the series ended? Well, let's start with Andre's fake Ranger, or the brown Mazda B4000. So he actually ended up fixing the fuel tank in that truck and then giving it to his dad. So his dad has been driving the Mazda around here in Boulder, Colorado, which I think is pretty funny. And it's been pretty good, actually. I want to say, all in all, he's probably in it somewhere with the purchase price, somewhere around like $4,000. But he's got that Mazda now he's driving around. It's on brand new tires, of course, from the series. And yeah, he's been enjoying it. Now, my Grand Cherokee, my WJ Grand Cherokee, was not a great financial decision in what I actually ended up doing with it. So it was $2,550 to purchase. And then, of course, that check engine light came on for an issue with the torque converter. So I had the transmission rebuilt, and that was $2,400. And then, like last week, the water pump went out on it, so that was another $700. So now, all in all, we're like $5,500 into this Grand Cherokee. However, I do like it a ton. I like it buckets, to be brutally honest with you, because it's just so comfortable. It's really good in bad weather. Blaze loves it. My dog Blaze, you can just throw him in the back, not worry about getting it dirty. We actually used it to move hay around a little while ago, and pumpkins and gourds and that kind of thing. So we're kind of using it like a pickup truck, but it's just been great. Sits in front of the house, use it to take the dog to the office and to the park. Going to use it in the winter time as well, and really good experience. Now, the Blazer, Nathan's Chevy Blazer, he intended to sell that as soon as possible because his wife hates it, and I can kind of understand that. It's got one airbag and it looks like it's about to fall over all the time. That has actually been really reliable. He drives that into the office quite often, unfortunately, because of rather sad situations that have been going on with his personal truck. So, in case you didn't notice, over on TFL Classics, we recently did a video where he bought one of his dream cars. Let me see where that video is at. So he went out and bought his affordable dream car. He's a huge Mitsubishi Montero fan, and that's what he bought. Looks great. He had it for a few days, and it started giving him issues, both electrical and then with the cooling system, and then it ended up leaving him stranded a couple times. I think once it left him stranded on the side of the highway. So this poor Nathan with this Montero, it's getting worked on, but he's many thousands into it at this point. He said it's been really hard to find parts for it as well. So he thought he had a good car, and it turned out to be a real problem. So this has been one of the sadder stories, and I'll have him update you once he gets it back from the shop. But the reason he hasn't sold the Blazer is because he's commuting in the Blazer while the Montero is broken. So the reliable, dead solid Mitsubishi is the car that's been costing him lots of money and been leaving him stranded, and the clapped out 230,000 mile Chevy Blazer is what he's been cruising around in. So that is what's going on with the Blazer, the Montero, the Jeep Grand Cherokee, and the Mazda B4000. So other personal vehicles, Andrei's Buchanka, his Russian van that he imported from the homeland, has been pretty good, I think, to Andrei. He actually drives it quite a bit. Maybe not to the office, but on weekends he's always sending me pictures of like cool shenanigans he's doing with it. And he loves taking it to car shows, which I just think is fantastic. Super happy for him. There's an interesting update which just happened. Oh, yes. It's also like an early 90s, like a 1992, so he had to get it through the emissions inspection, and it like failed everything really badly. So he's stressed about that, and he needs that to get it fully registered. So that's going to be his next ordeal. I think it's getting it through emissions and then dealing with all the paperwork and stuff. It's, interestingly enough, though, he got it insured really quickly. So he was able to find insurance like that, but the emissions and the registration is continuing to be a real challenge for Andrei. Some more information on that. Oh, I've got another interesting piece of information I forgot to tell you about. I just sold it, my Mercedes W123, which is a Mercedes diesel sedan. Sold that on Bring a Trailer, I guess almost a month ago now. It doesn't feel that long ago, but yeah, end of October. Pretty good experience with Bring a Trailer. I'll do a full video on what it's been like to work with them, but it was kind of a slow process, but the auction specialist was awesome, and I think I got a really good deal for it. It sold for, let me get the exact number, $12,050. Now, I didn't make a huge amount of money on it. I think I paid like $6,500 for it a couple of years ago, but I've got a lot of money into it with fixing the vacuum system and getting the air conditioning system back up and running and some issues with the climate control, so it's not like I made a huge amount of money on it, but still, I'm glad it went to a good home. It's actually living in St. Louis now. Fantastic guy, flew out, drove it home, road tripped it home, and I think he's enjoying the car quite immensely, and it's going to be his daily driver, so I'm going to miss the car. It was amazing, but I feel like I've experienced it, and time to move on to new horizons. All right, next up, the Honda Insight. And I'm not super sure why I parked so close to this wall, but let's talk you through the 2000 Honda Insight, the first ever hybrid sold here in the US. Now, we bought this. It was kind of a mess, so we were in it about $5,000, and then the high voltage battery took a dump on us, and then it sat for a while, and we just had it replaced. We'll have a full video on that soon. Now, the shop that replaced it didn't really want publicity, or free publicity, which I don't really understand, so we won't get into those details, but it cost about $1,500 to $1,800 to replace it, and they did it in like an hour flat, which was pretty amazing. So, not the end of the world, but we're in at like $7,000. Not really sure what the full plans are with this car. My dad kind of wants to sell it. I kind of want to hold on to it because even though it's clapped, I do love the Insight. It's just so weird. It looks like a Roach. It's got a manual transmission and it's a hybrid. Plus it's just so futuristic, all aluminum. So not really sure what the plans are, and with gas getting expensive, like really expensive, it might be good to have this car around. But yeah, it's got a new high voltage battery, $1,500 to $1,800. So those headlines that you saw a while back where they're like, high voltage batteries for 20, 30 grand, at least on the Insight, that didn't turn out to be true. Now, the orange Ford F100 is currently in storage, but not for long. We've got a really cool project series coming up with this where we're going to transform this truck, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Nothing final in the works yet, but we're pretty close to putting something really, really cool together, which you're definitely going to want to stay tuned for. We also have the FJ Cruiser, which is also in storage. I'm not really sure what the plan is for that. My dad loves that truck, but it just spends a lot of time sitting. So not sure what the plan is for the Toyota, but for the Ford, this thing's going to be rad when we're done with it. So what are the big takeaways from our ownership experience, both with the company and personal vehicles? Well, I am very, very, very impressed with the late 1990s Chevy Blazer that Nathan's been driving around in. He's like still amazed, I think, that it's running and driving as well as it is, and we'll have Nathan do a full update on his Montero coming up here shortly. I'm disappointed in the state of Colorado that they're making it so hard to register and insure these classic vehicles. I am blown away by the reliability of classic British motoring, at least with the Mini Cooper. The Porsche ownership has been pretty much what I was expecting, but I don't think this car is going to go anywhere very soon, because even though we're well beyond the price of what a good one would cost at this point, it's been kind of cool seeing it come back to life, so that's been very cool. We'd be saving a lot of money if we knew how to tinker on these cars, and actually that brings me to something I'm going to be doing. I'm actually taking a welding class over this weekend, and then hopefully over the next couple weekends as well, because I actually want to get my old Peugeot, my rusty Peugeot, back on the road, which is going to take a lot of welding this winter, but a skill I want to learn. And if you have any tips, can't wait to experience that coming up here shortly. Andre's loving the Buchanka, and the little yellow Citroen 2CV still looks like a snail. Well, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. As always, this has been Tommy with the Fastlane Car and the Fastlane Truck. Check out TFLclassics.com for the latest and greatest in new car reviews. And if you like the classics, you've come to the right place, the TFL Classics channel here on YouTube.